good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I am your host, Smooth Caramel, and I talk about rap, so that's what I'm gonna do.
Now this is a story.
No, we're not going to talk about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air now, although that intro song does display the basic tenets of storytelling rap. It sets the scene, introduces some characters, and keeps a steady pace. But nah. Let's not get ahead of myself here. Today we are talking storytelling in rap. Do y'all remember the first time that you got lost in music? The emotion completely captured your sense and your mind was focused solely on the subject matter of the song. For this I had more of a phase where my love and appreciation really took hold. So I made reference to my school days with long journeys on public transport. But while this was basically the standard for my youth, there was a particular time where I was most inclined to fully immerse myself in music. For this, I made playlists, but there's nothing too outside of the norm for that. But in doing so, there was this one particular month or so, just a more limited period of time, wherein which I'd inadvertently formed a playlist that was almost entirely made up of storytelling rap songs. At this point in time, it just seemed that they were the ones to truly engross me, and to quite a degree at that. And at this stage in life where self-imposed seclusion had become a consistent coping mechanism, my ability to fully engage with these songs was near optimal. A man would be scouring the school, looking for corners where I could just sit down and listen and enjoy my music quietly and undisturbed. Just wanted my own little space during my breaks where I could have my headphones on. I still remember my favorite spot that linked the playground to the technology block. It was a rarely used fire exit, and when I managed to find it unlocked, I would just slide in, get myself settled, turn the lights off so people didn't think to go down, and that would be me. I would basically form my perch. I'm actually writing it down makes it seem a whole lot worse than I thought it did beforehand. But the details around that is a whole other story. But anyway, headphones on, snack and drink procured, I then tuned my consciousness from this world to the many worlds contained within the contents of my music. The song that I think I played the most at this time was Tell a Story by Rhymefest, a 2006 song from his album Blue Collar. I think it's got the most rewinds and replays from me for a few different reasons. The tempo, consistency, and fluidity made it immediately accessible, with the simplicity in the melody being set in a few bars and then continued with the other more accessory aspects of the song's production, as well as the rapping once it does commence. The delivery is very earnest, raw, and emotional, but it's all of that without being excessively so, and through that remains relatable and entertaining. With this, his flow works pretty much perfectly with that bounciness to the beat, especially with his use of internal rhymes, as well as how he varies the use of patterns of these rhymes to balance the tone and gravity. Then there's the overall bittersweet tone of the song. The melody has such a buoyant bounce to it that it conjures images of something like a circus or a theme park, which is contrasted by the minor key. There's also some occasional background vocals that add life and texture, singing those upbeat yet wistful la la las. This is all captured by the primary song that is sung, the new birth's You Don't Have to Be Alone, which naturally utilizes a similar tone. But the subject matter in this Rhymefest song is mostly struggles, but mixed with mundane joys and experiences that color the overall emotional palette. Somewhat like how the combination of ups and downs make up that overall experience of life. Without getting too existential here, the chorus itself is almost in reverence of that experience of life with its ups and its downs. There's that cliche analogy of life being like a roller coaster with its ups and downs. But I think that's captured very well in this song through its production and the general conceit of the lyrics. This song is great for the state that I was in. Not really hating life, just feeling really weighed down by a lot of it. I wonder why this song came to mind in 2021. But I think it's able to achieve this through that storytelling format that it does utilize, so Let's break it down. To discuss what makes storytelling rap effective, we first have to just touch on what makes storytelling effective in general. The two main things that draw people into a story are character and conflict. We often relate to character, see the world through their eyes, but at the core, when presented with a story, we engage via the character in one way or another. And then the conflict or dilemma makes for the point of intrigue and interest that challenges the character, and this, in at least competently written stories, will tend to tie into the character flaws and by extension the overall themes and message to the story. One example I could think of would be in one of my favorite anime series, Steins Gate. Steins Gate is a story about relationships and determinism, where the conflict is essentially testing and fighting that determinism via the use of time travel to fulfill personal needs and desires. Trying to change one thing leading to other negative outcomes, or even the same negative outcome in a different way. These challenges lead to interesting character arcs in learning what kind of price these desires may demand. I'm not going to go into any more detail because, spoilers. If you've not seen this, then you probably should have, if you're an anime fan at the very least. Did I go out of my way to reference an anime that I like? Yes. Because I wanted to. Beyond that, the way that story is experienced is shaped by the medium. And we're of course talking about rap. So the most immediate distinction when it comes to storytelling in rap is in the use of its characters. Using characters makes the stories more grounded and relatable, with the lack of broader recognition or legacy making the stories feel like they could be you. And if it's first person or the rapper referring to themselves, it adds a realm of access and vulnerability that is usually not conferred in the usual narrative style of rap. Normally the rapper is held figuratively above the listener, as they are the one that is actually controlling and dispensing the narrative. The lyrics addressing the listener directly, if not then some vaguely defined recipient. But when it's not about them or it's a story that they're in, they're a little bit more subject to the events of the story, as would be the case for any other character that may be included. And this is built upon greatly by the production and of course the other musical components. The vocals in particular really adding depth and colour to the music and the story. When rap's used, they can also be combined with singing to really contrast the different characters in the story, making it clearer the different perspectives are at play. This works particularly well through more of a back and forth arrangement. A song that I think uses this very well is Are You Going My Way by Devin the Dude, an artist whose music I've really been appreciating lately. The tone is set well by the beat. The chorus is sung first, basically setting the scene and the tone before Devin first acts as that introduction to the encounter that's described. It's quite a comfortably slow tempo with low intensity, which communicates that almost ghetto, everyday, low stakes nature. Just a guy seeing a woman of interest and shooting his shot with some actual humility, which is and was quite refreshing for a 2017 song, considering the litany of, let's say, less than humble depictions of such events.
Yeah. When I get up all in ya, I can make a broke bitch rich, but I don't fuck a broke bitch.
You know how it goes. If you really want this paper, baby, stay on that pole.
These even somewhat form the backbone of my Bad Lyrics Are Funny series. But let's get back on topic. You have devices like sound effects and ad-libs as exclamation, which can add to the textures of the narrative that's being woven. An actual dialogue as speech within the song can build on that feeling of realism and character that's established. It can be separate from the narrator for the purpose of creating a further layer of narrative, as well as emphasizing the implied omniscience of the narrator. Or it can work as the narrator taking on different characters which are imbued with more personality through the vocal performance and distinctness of the voices and dialects that are created. You get this pretty prominently in what is likely to be one of the more famous storytelling rap songs, Eminem's Stan. In this one, M switches very distinctly from the perspective of Stan via letters, with the pencil scratching sound really adding some immersion to the piece, to his perspective as himself, or a fictional version of himself. The soft singing from Dido really breaks the piece up into three phases separated by significant periods of time in story. It also roots the forlorn and tragic tone between verses as the tone of the story as it's told descends. Quite the emotional classic if I do say so. Now, I know a lot of what makes storytelling in rap enjoyable is also the case for a lot of musical storytelling in general. Ballads are a pretty common trope for a reason. Where I see the distinction when it comes to rap is in the different ways that singing and rapping are perceived. Firstly, the natural and consistent meter of rap adds grounding in time, giving a real sense of its passage within the story as it's told. The lyrics arriving in a relatively consistent stream and pattern. Singing in ballads, for example, due to the looser, more flexible component of singing, can lack that consistency that creates and immerses within such a feeling of time as it passes. And when singing does ground itself more rhythmically to achieve this, you'll usually find that this is where it tends to sound especially rap-like. One example of this is A Tale of Two by Eric Roberson, a song that is sung almost in its entirety, but in that sing-rappy kind of a style. And because of that, I think it could be relatively easily recreated by just rapping along to the song as it is sung. You tend to have three different types of storytelling songs in rap. Mini stories where one verse is its own self-contained story, but within an overall theme and subject matter. Some examples being Runaway Love by Ludacris, Bullet, another one from Rhymefest, or Part-Time Mother by Tupac. You have the continuous story, where there's an ongoing narrative throughout the song, with the verses merely continuing from the previous ones, and the chorus acting as a reprieve or transitional point. Some examples of this would be Ole by J-Live and Testify by Common. Then you have the selective kind of storytelling, where there are specific parts with narratives to enhance the overall non-story song. Some examples being Walls and Addiction by Nas, or Here and Now by AC Alone. Damn, a man be here dropping song titles like Skittles. This has kind of ended up just being me dropping songs at y'all, but oh well. Hopefully you're still getting my points. Storytelling is quite a unique skill within rap, which is probably why most rappers with these types of songs have quite a lot of them. Between people like Eminem, Lupe Fiasco, Kendrick Lamar, Slick Rick, you could build a reasonably length playlist alone. People can even miss those story elements consciously if the tone and the scale are large and appropriate to the point where it's not immediately visible. And if there is a powerfully catchy hook. Kick Push by Lupe and Swimming Pools by Kendrick being great examples with their large, infectious, repetitive choruses easily eclipsing the overall stories being told in the verses, if only just by the more passive listener. But this has gone on long enough, let's move it along to the more obscure. To begin with, we have You Grew Up by Oddisee, an interesting song with a few short stories about how childhood experiences and vulnerability affect the resultant adult, and it does focus on a more tragic example. Really hits you with that reality. The second song I'm going to recommend will be one by the Coup, Me and Jesus the Pimp in a 79 Granada last night. A long, ongoing narrative that simply details odd, memorable, and noteworthy events along the timeline discussed with the characters that affect the speaker. The Coup are really an underrated hip hop group for sure. They've got that really old school laid back hip hop vibe that I think gets missed a lot in these more recent days. And the last one I'll mention is MC Lyte's Poor Georgie. It's a bit of a cautionary tale without being too preachy or condescending, and it stokes thought as well as sympathy for the speaker. It talks about a previous lover of Lyte, or her character, who ends up going through a lot of different things, struggles, pain, and the way that it affects Lyte as a person, as well as the Georgie in question and how they ended up. Sometimes a story just gets a message across so much better than just talking about a subject. But I shall refrain from going into any psychological type shit here, so I'm gonna wrap this up. Peace and love, people, all of that goodness. This has been another Smooth Caramel production. All of this, and I didn't even mention Slick Rick and his art of storytelling. Oh well, I'm sure another video will come. Memories on the album is a tune though.